Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a well-respected author from Memphis, Tennessee, USA, Mr. Saji Madpat. Saji, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's truly an honor. It is an amazing platform. I'm a big admirer of yours. I've seen your amazing background. I believe I'm maybe one of the 3,300s.
Yeah.
The guest in your show. It's truly an honor, considering your wide ranging. The high profile, including the Mexican.
Thank you.
Ex-premier, bringing, I don't know, I'm worthy enough to be in this platform.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
So Saji is an author, a global strategist, a management consultant, and a contrarian investor. He's also an author of several books. So Saji, my first question, can you describe the key turning points that shaped your personal and professional journey?
That is the whole life is a tiger ride, lack of a better word, If I may give, I was born in a Orthodox Catholic environment, but my father was a rebel against the system. He used to teach in one of the Catholic institutions. He was a professor in the Catholic institution, and somehow, he turned against the establishment. So he gave my name itself. He gave a Hindu name, the Ganesha. The Sajit means, Ganesha.
Yeah.
He gave I was reading more of a Bhagavad Gita than Bible at home, in short.
Right.
So maybe to give a little bit history about the Kerala itself, we believe we are followers of St. Thomas in 52 AD. St. Thomas landed in that part of the world, and we believe we are followers of St. Thomas. But later on, the Christian missionaries, brought by all the colonizers, the Portuguese and the French and the Britishers, they all brought it. They started the schools all around the state. As a result, it's a 100% literate, 96 or 99 or whatever the percentage, treated as 100% illiterate. So the education brought the communism is also that part of the world. So as a result, it's an amazing paradise, but it's an industrial desert. It's a great place for the tourism. As a result, after my engineering, I had to pack my bags to the Mumbai. When I landed in Mumbai, and initially one of my first project was the job was at a pharmaceutical company. I soon realized there is with being my Kala Madrasi background, lack of a better word, it's a very very little opportunity for me to move up. So I realized I need to have an MBA to move up, So I came back to the South, and as a national integration candidate, again, we give the quota in the name of, as a national integration candidate, I did my MBA in France, and again, went back to Mumbai, and this time I worked for Anand Rathi. He was the Bombay Stock Exchange vice president, I started in his consulting firm, and then there again, at that time, the 96, about 30 years ago, when Indian stock market had a little bit of funny, moves around. So I realized again, this were pre-Y2K times. Realized I can better utilize my industrial engineering background and my MBA in finance. I switched from investment banking career to the corporate finance and got into the ERP side. And I came here I got a cyber coolie passport over here. Those were the pre-Y2K times.
Wonderful.
So I came here as a Y2K consultant. Then the bubble burst in early 2000s. I switched my career to the EPM side on the financial reporting, the financial engineering side of the business. And I was with one of the my big four consulting firm and got into the financial engineering. Then the 2008 hit. So with the economic tsunami, I realized whatever the hell I'm doing with my life, and especially professionally, that is not going to, the world is big way changing. So I need to turn again. The key turning point was I become the victim of my own success in the financial engineering side. Then I spent a little bit of time in my soul searching in Cambodian jungles and in Hong Kong, in China, that part of the world. So I realized the world is big way changing. You need to look at, rather than looking at the top from the top of the pyramid, you need to look at from the bottom of the pyramid. So I did an executive leadership program with a
Yeah,
Clinton
Saji,
Global Foundation.
I'd like to move on
Sure.
rather than go chronologically through
Sure.
everything that you have done.
Uh-huh.
So, when you look back, which moment or experience would you say defined your evolution as a thought leader?
Um, uh, my as a thought leader perspective, my background in growing up in Kerala, that played a big role. As I mentioned, my father himself was a rebel against
Yeah,
establishment. I
yeah, you
started
told me that.
along with the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
I was reading some of the Nexal. He used to subscribe that Nexal publications also. I used to read that perspective. But after coming here, especially after coming here, I've seen the whole, especially the 2008 was a big turning point and looking at it from a world from a different perspective. And economics, the COVID-19 hit in, especially with the Trump 1.0 administration, looking at from that perspective in the whole world and the new world order coming on, that was another total, like especially from the publication perspective, coming out with the Gods Must Be Crazy, the book coming out with, and with the recent the second edition of that book, with especially with the Trump 2.0, with all the tariff wars and all the Modi Trump fiascos going on, like that was another, process of
So,
looking
tell
at the
me,
world. Yeah.
many of your books challenge mainstream narratives.
Uh-huh.
What drives this very contrarian approach in your writing?
That is a great point. Again, with my upbringing as a contrarian, by by birth itself, I tried to take a look at it. The mainstream perspective, I felt, like the especially with the China's emergence now. So we need to, whatever the world we are living in, that is big way changing. You need to look at from a completely, let me put the environment which I am in is more of a hunter kind of mindset. So we're always looking for the next hunt, next kill, or the quarterly result, or like the very short-term minded perspective we are looking at it. Versus like the other way, when I looked at it, that's the engineering, financial engineering business I'm in. But on the other side, especially the China, the Eastern mentality, that is more of a farmer mindset. They're looking from a long term. They are from a dynastical perspective. They're looking at a 2049 perspective. So we need to, unless we have a bunch of frogs, especially in this part of the world, in a tepid water, we are not real, or rather snake oil. We are not realizing the water is getting, or the snake oil is getting in the boiling
I
stage,
see.
So
Okay.
you need to look at from a different
Very
perspective,
interesting.
Yeah.
But you write across a very wide range of topics and different genres. Tell me a little bit about why do you have such a wide range of topics, and how do you prepare yourself for such different topics?
Um, Well, the wide range of topic again, coming from a wide-ranging background, like again in the state, the key place I'm coming from, the God's own country. There are about 800 indigenous, over 800 indigenous Theyyam gods in that part of the world, but there is very little understanding about that part of the those gods, and I felt it is my personal responsibility as like the people, some of the poor of the poorest in India. They send me over here. It is my duty to give back to the community where I'm coming from. The business book, I felt it is my, I'm a, personally, I'm responsible for many of the financial engineering. I work with some of the largest corporations in the world. I felt, it's my responsibility to, before it is too late, address some of those, fundamental issues happening. Again, what I find is many of the solutions are looking at our own roots, our own history, whether it is in the US or on the business side, looking at who built the foundation, like the 100 years ago that Roosevelt's, Theodore Roosevelt and the FDRs, they built the foundations of from the from the business perspective. From the Eastern perspective, we're looking at some of those gods. Many of these gods are rebel gods. Many of them are crucified gods. And we can learn the leadership from, it is not a stories, the mythologies, people say it is a mythology. I rather treat it as the best, the histories. These are living, these are historic people. And they become the gods, So we can learn, from those. Yeah.
Wonderful. You also use a lot of humor to tackle serious geopolitical or economic themes. Tell me a little bit more about what role does humor play?
Well, of course, touching upon a very tough, especially in this part of the world. I'm in Bible Belt. Again, I'm addressing even some of the very tough topic. And if I tell as it is, it's very difficult to swallow that kind of solution, unless. And it is going to be a very, there are lots of management books, there are a lot of scholarly books, there are a lot of think tanks, they all publish it from a perspective also as it is. But unless you need to make it reader friendly, especially from, I'm targeting not just the scholars, not just the educational universities, I'm targeting, it need to be, the people need to, and the common man also need to understand. So I'm along with the approach of the Faris Zakaria approach, I'm taking the approach of Jimmy's or the Carlin's or again, you need to make it reader friendly, or you need to make it interesting read to take it to the ordinary readers.
So tell me, you've been telling me a lot about Kerala and Theyyam and the multiple gods. What role does ancient wisdom and modern technology play in your own thinking framework?
As I mentioned, the world is going through what we are seeing is everything is cyclical stuff. Everything you can if you, the challenges we are facing today, we had the exact, especially this country is a 250-year-old country. I'm talking about the US. We had the very similar challenges 100 years ago. It was solved by Theodore Roosevelt, whether it is through the Square Deal or then FDR by the New Deals, addressed the depressions, and he addressed the world wars and all those things. So we are getting into the very same situation over here. So we can look at always the history back. This country. In our scenario, in some of this Theyyam and many of our own, the Indian mythologies, it's dated back to the Bronze Age, or again the thousands of years. So the people, the very same people, our historical figures, they went through the same kind of challenges. So many of those we can address by reading, not reading about the Jack Welch or the management business, the typical, management solutions. We can learn more by learning from the history books, or even by reading their obituaries, and again, many of these obituaries are now coming as, in the form of Theyyam, or, we are celebrating them as a god, and, the rituals, Yeah. So we can always learn from our own history, our own roots, rather than looking at the.
How has your exposure to both communist ideology and capitalist systems shaped your approach to your writing?
As I mentioned, I'm always a rebel in the system. Again, I was brought up in the Kerala, that is the state where the first time a communist government was democratically elected in EMS Namboodiripadu in 1957, if I remember right. So it is, I was always, as a result, I've seen some of the good side and the bad side of the, so, like again, that state is a progressive state, there's 100% illiterate, but as a result, there is no industrial opportunity over there. I had to move out. I've seen the good side and the bad side, the ugly side of the, especially from the career perspective over there. And I wrote The Tiger from the cradle of communism, that's from Kerala, to the catacomb of capitalism. I'm saying that I'm doing the consulting work in some of the largest corporations. Till recently, my client was the second largest private equity firm in the world, an alternate investment manager. I was doing the consulting work for the straight in the CFO's office and the CIO's office. I've seen the very short-term look at this part of the world. They're looking for every corporations or even in the political environment, they're looking for next hunt, whether it's a quarterly result or the elections in every 2 years or presidential elections in every 4 years. They're chasing. Versus we need to look back from a farmer kind of mindset. We need to, rather than looking for the corporation, many of the Silicon Valley companies, they're looking from a perspective of they want, their objective is to become more like a unicorns, very short term, or looking for the next exit to sell. Also, versus we need to look back, we need to bring the mindset of the farmer mindset. Another aspect is that people call it as China as a communist country, but it is they learn from the capitalist system, from the Theodore and the FDR. They're more practicing
so given all the work that you've done and all your experience, do you see a revival of Eastern philosophical thought in global leadership and economics today?
That is my core thesis of the book is that typically, especially the reason the management philosophy of this part of the world is more of a hunter mindset, looking for a next skill. Next, at the end of the day, if you're looking for a next skill, you'll be ended up bunch of skeletons in, all over. Versus Eastern philosophy, especially the Chinese one, the philosophy they are adapting is more of a farmer's kind of mindset. They take care of the land, they take care of the people, and they're in it for their objective is 2049, the centenarial. And they're building the dynastical, they're building the empires. Versus over here, we are looking at the quarterly result, or we are looking at the next, As a result, we are looking at unicorns. That is not going to last the next desert or next the storm or versus the camel. What China is building or the Eastern philosophy is building, that can withstand all kind of desert environment, all kind of storms, and unless we learn from the East some of this the philosophical stuff, it is. Let me put it this way. Peter Drucker, he predicted back in 2020, I believe, the corporations as we know now, it is 120 years now, all. But that's not going to last next 25 years. So his prediction is going to, and especially with the kind of environment we are in, especially the Chinese economy is taking over a big way. I'm predicting, as it is going to be a Chinese AI century. If we don't learn from our own history, our own, some of this philosophy we're talking about.
Right.
So most of the corporations over here not going to survive in this kind of environment.
So I have time for 2 more questions for you. How do you see your role as both a myth maker and a strategist?
Let me put it this way. What I'm writing, I don't want to call it as a mythology. This is history. These are the people, whether it is a Kadvinur Veeran or many of those Theyyam gods or many of our own, the gods, like the Gramadevadas back in India, they are all true living legends. And most of them are crucified gods. They are the people against the establishment. They were, like crucified by the establishment. So you can learn how they survived in that kind of environment, and you can learn from the leadership. If you take a look at the example, Bible is the best management book in the world. So you can learn many from the leadership skills from by Jesus itself. So these are all not mythologies. We need to look back our roots, and we need to identify the stories which we can adapt to today's environment. So I don't think whether I'm writing on a Theyyam is I rather treat it as a more of a best management book. Many of those stories are the best management stories.
Wonderful.
Than in the today's Jackwell stories or what we read in the business schools.
So my last question for you, you've done an amazing transition from being a professional to now pursuing your creative pursuits. What advice would you give to professionals looking to make a transition like you have made?
First of all, be careful what you're wishing for, the transition. But we do not have any much choice, especially coming with the AI coming into the picture. Even the McKinsey's own prediction, especially the professional class, whether it is you're a programmer or an engineer or doctor or lawyers, all those sectors are going to be pretty much get wiped out, especially with the AI. And it used to, for me, I transitioned from the industrial engineer to the MBA into the investment banker to I had the luxury of several years or decades to transition. But with the AI, now everything coming into the exponential age, you need to you need to unlearn many of those, what you learned from the past, especially if you're an MBA, unlearn many of the stuff which we learned in the business school. We need to bring your creative mind, how you can enable, how you can use the AI in the hybrid environment, whether you're a programmer, you need to start learning, how to use the same way. If you're a lawyer, you need to better utilize, you need to better learn Claude and the capabilities of research capabilities to Gemini, or you need to be always creative. You need to be always learner. The best thing, the most important aspect, you need to be creative. You need to be storytelling. You need to tell your story from your.
Wonderful.
You need to pitch it to your client, or you need to pitch it to your boss, or you need to pitch it to your family or a wife or a spouse or whomever.
Wonderful. But on that note, Saji, I just want to say thank you very much for speaking to me. You had a fascinating journey. You've shared with us some very interesting thoughts. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
And once again, it's truly an honor, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.